Jeannie and Stuart.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Stuart.
Good morning. Thanks, Irina. Hello, Jenny.
Yes, thank you so much, Irina, for introducing me to Stuart, because I have had such a great time talking to you and learning from you and discovering a whole world of soap and solid personal care. And I really think it's such an interesting story to go through today, that we're going to talk about what was old is new again.
That's exactly right.
So like Irina said, your company has a long history. It's 144 years old. So, and you're based in Rhode Island. So let's just give a little context. You're on the East Coast.
Yeah, that's correct. So our main facility is here in Rhode Island. We have a facility in Columbus, Indiana, and that's where we produce everything that goes all over the world.
Great. And can you share with us sort of like the history of Bradford, like what it started making up to what it makes today, and a few of the keynote clients that you have currently and some of their hero products, which you shared with me. I got a beautiful box of samples. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. We love sharing the products. So just a little bit about Bradford. So as Irina said, we were founded in 1876 by two gentlemen from England, and happened to be Bradford, England, and they came to the center of the New World, which was the textile capital of the New World, which was Rhode Island. Rhode Island had all this textile happening, and so they came over and created a company. And originally the company, we did soap flakes for scouring wool. And we did that for a long, long time. And in about the 40s and 50s, the company expanded their product offering into value-added finished products. So what does this mean? It was like flame retardant materials for textiles. It was polyethylene emulsions to make paper shiny. And then in the 1960s, as the paper industry in the Northeast moved south and ultimately west, and the textiles ultimately moved overseas, we pivoted and started doing toilet soap. So just basic bar type soap, and just started developing that technology. And then in about 10 years later or so, we started doing what we call specialty bar soap, where we started developing formulas and innovating soap. So we made the first bar of soap for Tom's of Maine. So Tom and Kate Chappelle came down from Maine, said, we have this all natural toothpaste. Can you make a soap? And it had to be all natural. Amway, we made their first bar of soap. Cetaphil / Galderma, we made that first bar of soap. We actually helped Unilever launch their product, a little brand called Dove. And we made the West Warwick Post Office the #5 post office in the United States, because we did, way back when they used to do sampling programs. So you'd open up your mailbox and you'd get a little 1-ounce sample, or you go to the dermatologist. So, and then in about 2001, we became the first soaper that was organically certified. And then in 2012, we worked with Rainforest Alliance, establishing standards for their palm sourcing, and we started sourcing Rainforest Alliance palm. And then in 2018, we started expanding the breadth of the company to go from bar soap to solid personal cleansing to solid personal care. And I've mentioned some of the great customers that we work with, but it's companies like Method. There's the big companies like Unilever and Henkel and P&G. It's the smaller companies like Oars and Alps, and so we work with anybody that's looking to make a difference in solid personal care.
Yeah, and one of the clients, I got a sample box of lots of different products. So many of the products you see on the shelves are made by Bradford. Dr. Bronner's is another soap that you make, and Kiehl's. There's a soap, Kiehl's. So I had sort of a big, we named this session from bar soap to solid personal care, because I had, I've been sort of starting to experiment with shampoo bars.
Mm-hmm.
And
one of our favorites.
Yeah. So that's kind of the next thing I've started to see in terms of solid personal care. We're seeing, um, some companies that want to really minimize packaging go in that direction. And I was so surprised when I started testing some solid shampoos that they work really well, just as well as the shampoo in the bottle. And I wanted to sort of talk to you, like, what happened? Where did we go from creating, why didn't we create solid personal care originally? Why did we go into these liquid formats that take so much water and takes so much packaging and so much shelf space and, consumes so much, where we could have just, Bradford could have just started to make solid personal care as, instead of just making soap.
Right. So, I'll go back a little bit. I mean, bar soap, the first time people have started talking about bar soap was like 2800 BC, right? And it was a very simple chemistry where animal fats dripped into a fire, and that potash created a chemical reaction, and it created soap, right? And then as hygiene advanced, like in 100 AD in the Roman Empire, soap was one of the most famous things for hygiene, and so there's a long storied history, and it had a great history up until probably the mid 1800s, probably like 1850, 1865, right in that area. And I think a couple of things happened. Number one, there was new chemistry, new chemicals in the market, right? And you had chemistry folks at these brands, and they started creating, and they were able to create surfactants that would survive in liquid. Number two, people started developing a container, a plastic container that made it easy to use liquids. And people looked at bar soap, and there was some, and I think a historical perception, and perception is reality, that you shared a bar of soap, and people didn't really like that. There was a perception that you kind of got an individual usage out of, a pump or a little squeeze. Sometimes a bar of soap can, because of the minerals, and it's a salt and a magnesium typically byproduct that can build a soap scum, right? And people are like, oh, it's a dirty product. And so I think, and let's be honest, liquid soap is so much water. It's 80 to 90% water. It's very profitable for the brands, right? So as it started to get embedded into something, it was kind of that new shiny silver thing that's out there. There was a huge transition of folks, of consumers, who went in that direction. And it really made the market almost 50-50.
Also to make, like, doesn't it need to cure bar soap?
Bar soap cures. So there's a couple of ways to do it, but we start it really from the earth. We do 40,000, 45,000 pound kettles, and we saponify natural oils. They can be tallow oils, veggie oils, and there's some caustic like potash, right, and out of a fire, and there's a natural chemical reaction that occurs. So this big kettle, it probably takes us 24 hours or so to complete a kettle, right? Liquid soap is much easier. I tell folks, you can go home, put a bunch of water in your bathtub, throw some chemicals and fragrance in, and you end up, it's relatively simple. I'm not a scientist, but yeah, you can create relatively quickly a liquid soap. So I think, you know, with all things, it was easy, it was simple, there were some perceptions out there, and we've tried to continue to battle the perception of bar soap. So bar soap is the most antibacterial product in the market, and it doesn't even have to contain any antibacterial chemicals or materials in it, because there's not a significant amount of water in the end product, maybe 5, 6, 10% in the end product, and that's really through the whole process of what goes in. It doesn't build bacteria on it, versus shower wash, shower gels, hand pumps. Those can contain a lot of bacteria because of the water content in there. So it's kind of funny, as people started moving away from bar soap in the mid 1800s, early 1900s, it was because of convenience and probably a stigma of not sharing, a bar of soap, and it's probably as far from the truth as it can be. So, so I think it's convenience. I think today, as people start looking at water, people start looking at plastics, single-use plastics, people start looking at the environment and what are we going to do. People are starting to go back to the basics and really starting to appreciate more what solid personal care and solid cleansing is all about. I love a bar soap. Obviously, I'm biased, right? But I get to try all the different ones. But the tactile feel of that bar of soap in the shower, the aroma, the smell, whether it's tea tree or orange or lavender in the morning, it just has a great emotional connection, and I don't think you get that emotional connection with water. So so we're trying to lead the charge with others and trying to give people some alternatives.
Yeah, well, I think it's so fascinating, as we, I always think about like going into these big box stores and you go down an aisle of, the shampoo aisle or the body wash aisle or the laundry detergent aisle. You just take a look at one big box store and all of that plastic that's up on the shelf. And it's just sort of, I think, we're dealing with a lot of eco weight and eco guilt, and, really waking up to the fact that we've really started to rely on plastic in ways that, single-use plastics that are not sustainable at all for our planet. And companies are looking for ways to create products that are functional, beautiful, a great experience, and are zero waste or much, much less waste. So you have started to work, you're starting to expand Bradford's offerings from soap to different types of products. What are some of the products you're getting asked to make, and how are you focusing on innovation at Bradford?
Sure. So one thing that Bradford has always prided itself on is innovation, and you'll never see the Bradford name on a bar of soap or a solid personal cleansing product, but we spend a lot of time in our labs and in our marketing group trying to predict trends and try to come up with new stuff. So I think what we've seen over the past 6 to 12 months is the resurgence of bar soap. By us doing a kettle method, we can really provide very unique bases to every single brand. So there's not one product that is exactly like the other. So we can go 100% olive oil soap, we can go 50-50. So 50-50 coconut oil and palm oil or sunflower oil or whatever you want. And so that really makes everything unique. And so what we're seeing is brands, small and big alike, looking to go back to bar soap and create something that's different. Because consumers are not interested anymore in the big, I'll say, mega brands. What they want is they want a product that is specifically tailored to them. And these smaller brands And even the big companies are creating smaller brands that will, hey, Jeannie really likes, a lavender smell that has extra moisturizing in it and maybe another hero ingredient. And so they can do almost small batches. So bar soap, number one, bar soap, that's our legacy, that's our history. But as we start looking at this, we started working on shampoo bars. And we've been working on shampoo bars for a long time. And the problem that we found originally with shampoo bars, for somebody like me, we could make a really good shampoo bar. For somebody like you, it didn't have all of the elements. But over the last 3 or 4 years, what we've been able to do is develop a shampoo bar, and I think we may have talked about it at the beginning, that will make people with lots of hair and great hair, it works just as well as liquids. And the surfactants that we can put in there are just phenomenal. And so we were able to work with a couple of brands recently, the Love Beauty Planet brand and for the Earth brand, and develop a shampoo bar. So we're really excited about that because we're just at the very beginning of this with consumers, and consumers are starting to look at this and say this is something they want. The other thing that goes along with it is a conditioning bar, right? So what we found, if you have a shampoo bar, you need a conditioning bar. And that nut has been a little harder to crack. And we're actually in trials over the last 30 days for a very unique conditioning bar, and we think we're almost there. So that's really exciting.
Well, if you need a lot of hair to test it,
we'll get you some to try.
I'd love to test it. Yeah. I've really been enjoying kind of getting into solid hair care. It's been fun to test and see what's out there and see how it works.
Yeah. So that's been the biggest nut. I don't get to test that. I use them, but I don't get to test them because I don't provide much value. But what we're finding with the shampoo bar, from a water perspective, our shampoo bar uses about 6% water and ends up with about 5% water in it, versus a bottle of shampoo uses has about 80% water, and it starts with 80% water, finishes with 80% water. The other couple of things that we're working on are deodorant stick. So an all-natural deodorant stick that has efficacy. What we found is that these all-natural deodorant sticks that are on the market may not have a lot of efficacy. So we've spent a lot of time in building up some bases, a shea butter base, an aloe base, a bio base, and we're working on a butter base that will give you 24 to 48 hours of efficacy. All natural ingredients, very little water in it. Moisturizing sticks. So
some like lotion sticks, lotion bar.
Yeah, and these moisturizing sticks have absolutely no water in the making of them, and I use them every day on my hands or my face. It's just a very unique product, and prior to this, I didn't use creams because they felt greasy to me. But this is it's a very heavy base of shea, some cereal oil, and some cocoa butter. Has a great melt point, and then we can use that moisturizing stick to tweak a bit and turn it into like a little bit different product. So like a chafing stick or a stretch mark stick, which one of our brands recently launched. Also, we can do a fragrance stick. So we know how much fragrance is important to people. And so you can put a really heavy dose of fragrance that will help your day get started or relax you in the evening in a stick format. Again, no water added to the production process. It would just be the liquid that's in the fragrance. So what else? A shave stick. Again, that's being derived out of our moisturizing stick. So yeah, so it's for men and women. So instead of foam, it almost envision a natural deodorant stick. And for a man, I can put it on and I can kind of outline my little goatee, so I don't have foam all over the place. It's transparent, so you can see the skin. For people that like a little more of the flowery fragrances, there's those for women, so it's great for legs. So wherever you want to use it, very little to no water in the production of it again. And so we've helped a couple of brands launch a stick. One of the probably the most prominent names out there right now is Cremo. They launched it in January and really like the product. So I think those are the highlights. It's exciting because it's kind of a new twist, but it's in that solid personal care arena. And whenever you compare it to any of the products made in a liquid format, it is 7 to 17 times less water being used in the manufacturing process. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about this when you and I were speaking about water, and I really thought about this for after our talk about it being less water in the manufacturing process, and I think that what's so interesting to me about solid personal care is not so much about water, actually. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love that it's got less water, it's using less water, but it's not actually the water that's as much of the problem as it is the packaging to contain the water mm-hmm. solution mm-hmm. that is really, creating, I think, a lot of waste. And also the carbon footprint from transporting those bottles full of mm-hmm. solutions all around. So when you take out the water, if you're packaging your solid personal care in plastic, you're using less plastic, but there's a lot of options to actually forego plastic altogether. Yes. And one of the things that I learned from you was that, and I didn't know this before, that the paper that wraps soap isn't always, I just thought it was paper. Yep. You put it in your recycling bin or your compost bin, depending on where you are. But that's not always the case. Soap paper can have chemicals in it that are mold inhibitors and can be plastic coated. Why don't you tell us a little bit, sure. Give us an education on soap paper? Yeah, so if you think of just a regular paper wrap on a bar of soap, and you look at it and you would say, oh, that can be recycled, right? Now we make most of all of we source most of all of our paper wraps from recyclable paper. But the biggest inhibitor from that to be recycled is that there's glue on the end of each tab to make it stick. Yeah. And that glue is what makes it not recyclable, mm-hmm. right? So that's the challenge. And over the past several years, we've been trying to work with different suppliers on creating some packaging that was not only made from recycled materials, but that can be recyclable. To kind of put it in perspective, about 50% of all of our paper wraps that we use are 100% PCR, right? So now the challenge is, okay, how can we move this product to something that can have a full life cycle of being recycled? So we've been working with a brand, which I won't name because they're about to launch over the next few days, is a recycled piece of wrap that can be recyclable. Mm-hmm. The challenge is it's 30% more expensive than the non-recyclable. But this brand is going out and saying, you know what, we're going to take that increase in cost because it's better for the consumer and it's better for the environment. So that is the challenge. Now, cartons, if you don't have some soap comes in a carton. So if you don't have glue on the end of the carton, some of those cartons are interlocked. That becomes recyclable and recycled products. So to your earlier point of plastic
We don't wrap any of the bar soaps in plastic. So the packaging options are much better. So so we're making progress. The cartons are much better. Most of the cartons are either FSC or PCW, or they're carbon neutral in the manufacturing process. All of the corrugated is 100% recyclable and that. So everything that container is a big deal. Plus, as you said a little bit earlier, it's much more condensed product. You can get more product on a truck, and so the carbon footprint is much better.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it all the way, the packing material to be able to pack soap safely and protect it from, shipping damage is so much, you're using a lot less packing material. There's just like, when you think about it all the way through, solid products make so much sense from an environmental standpoint. But I want to ask you this one question, because this fascinates me. And I think these are the kinds of things I really think about. So you have this paper that is the paper wrap for soap available to all your suppliers.
Yep.
But not only one of them right now is using it. I'm sure it's just starting to take shape and to get more, that you're starting to present it to more of your clients. But not everybody wants something like that because it's 30% more expensive. So
the paper wrap that we're working, so it's kind of the first. It's an industry first. So it's very, very much at the beginning process of this. So we've presented this to all of our customers, and we have this one brand that said, yeah, we're going to go down this path. But you're right.
Yep. You're talking about 30% more. So I'm imagining a piece of paper for a bar of soap, you're talking in cents.
It would be cents. It would be cents. So you've got two things going on, right? So we feel we're the thought innovator, thought generator. So as we start presenting this to the brands, and I will say, I'll do a little sidecar here. What we're seeing over the last 3 to 5 years is all the brands are more blue, green conscious, and they've all set major goals in the area of either water or sustainability for 2025, 2030, or 2050. Major initiatives. So we're seeing a bigger acceptance of these ideas by everyone. So it's the journey. So I look at this and it's a journey. We got to start with 1, and then 1 goes to 3, and 3 goes to 5, and before you know it, you get 100%. But there are some brands out there that are what we call cheap and cheerful. We don't do a lot of those brands, but they're cheap, and they look at half pennies and quarter pennies. There's other brands that aren't that focused. They're looking on what fits their brand profile and what's better for the environment. And I think what you'll see, and this is relatively new, but I think that's what we'll see, is more people will move. And the penny or the half penny isn't going to change that. And I would almost liken it to organic foods, right? If you go into the supermarket, there's the organic food section, and then there's the non-organic food section. And more people are starting to go down this route than that route, but it takes some time to get there.
I totally understand, and I get it. I just want to sort of put it in a little bit of context, though. When we're talking about 30% more for paper wrap, that equals to just a few cents, maybe.
Few cents on bar, a few cents a bar, and to some companies, it's millions and millions of bars, right? So yes, it's could, on a per unit basis, is inconsequential. And another piece of it is, I can't speak for all brands, but brands are looking towards their bottom line at some point, right? Other brands are using it as an investment.
I totally understand. I think, the example that I always think about is that the innovation has been there for years. There have been really functional, non-plastic straws, compostable coffee cup tops, non-plastic coffee stirrers. Those have existed and been presented to Starbucks many, many years ago. And it's a conscious choice that they had not to embrace that. And it's something that I just, think we need to say out loud is they made a conscious choice not to make a better choice for the environment. And even though, and it was just a few cents, and they had an opportunity to change the coffee experience, the consumer's expectation from coffee houses all over the world. If Starbucks made that like 1 penny change early on, we wouldn't be having, if Starbucks didn't use plastic coffee cups, nobody would anymore, because Starbucks would have set the standard.
Sure.
And I think that's such an interesting thing to see play out in different industries, where sort of these bigger companies that have, to your point, they have millions of bars of soap, that they are, billion-dollar companies or multi-million-dollar companies, and they are not willing to make that few cent or less, whatever the shift is, to sacrifice it for the improvement of the planet. And it's just something, it's not to like call anybody out or to like point fingers. It's just a phenomenon that that I think we owe our planet to talk about now, and for people that are watching this conversation to be inspired to make the better choice, because we're all in this together.
I totally agree, and so I am encouraged, because I think there is more emphasis being put by, and I'll say the bigger brands, to look at all the aspects of carbon footprint, sustainability, clean products, which will have an impact. And I think we should reward some of the smaller brands that came before and said, hey, consumers, there is a group of consumers that want this product, or our mission is to do this. And they've really pushed the envelope to show that it can be successful, right? And I think it's imperative that everybody talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the more something will happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see that play out over and over again, where smaller brands are really setting the pace and setting the tone and changing consumer tastes and expectations. And obviously, I hope Beauty Heroes is doing that as well.
Yes, you are. Yes.
Bradford has several other sustainability initiatives that you have mentioned, your Sustainable Palm and Shay, and also the giving, sort of what you do with soap waste. Do you want to share some of those? Because I think it's really cool for people to hear about what you're thinking about, and what you're, how you're innovating and trying to be blue in all these different ways in your company.
Yeah, so the first thing that we tackled, and I say the first thing, it was really from an ingredient side, was palm oil, and we're members of our RSPO, and I've been to Malaysia, I visited the plantations, and we know everything about, not everything, but we know about RSPO traceability and all that fun stuff. But we thought there must be a better way, and so in 2012 we started working with Rainforest Alliance to set a standard for palm oil, and find sources of that we could use and offer to our customers. And so in 2012 we're able to certify a plantation in Central America. And so, and we've gone down, I've visited it personally because I really want to see it. And it's a family-owned plantation. They do other products besides palm, but they run I'll say a fair trade, sustainable process. They care for the environment, and they care for the community. And so, and by that, they're spending over $1 million a year. They've established in medical. So they established a medical facility for the people in this, I'll call it a remote town from the major city there. And the University of Denver brings in medical students and dentistry. And we visited the clinic while we were there, and they were doing, pediatrics and dental care and a whole bunch of stuff. And then they do schooling as well. So they make sure that there's a building, that there's food, there's a dress code, and they help with that. And I think each school, as I recall, it costs them $40,000 to $50,000 a year. So we just love the opportunity to offer that to our consumers, or to our brands. And so in 2012, we had nobody buying this palm oil. And now we've moved about 60% of our consumers, our brands, to the Rainforest Alliance product, which is super. It's the ability to give back. And the way the product has Rainforest Alliance certified, I'll say, ingredients in it, is you'll see a little green frog on the packaging. So we have, companies like Tom's of Maine. If you look at their bar of soap, there's the green tab on it. If you buy Dole fruit products, they have the little green frog on it. So you look for that green frog. We really like it because it's an independent certification process versus the other certification. So that's one thing that we did. And then probably 2 years to 3 years ago, we were starting to use a lot of shea butter. And we were made aware of where shea comes from. And it comes, we source it from Africa, around Ghana. There's a strip in I'll say northern Africa where the shea trees are grown. And we heard a couple of different stories. So one was you have these villages which were very male dominated, but you had these women for years who have been growing shea. Now shea fruit is like an apple. It grows, it drops once a year, it has to be collected. So these women of these communities, with their children, either if they're infants, attached to them, and I say attached, wrapped in like a sarong, they would go pick the shea off the fields, out of the tree, hike back to I'll say the kitchen area of the village, and they would process the shea. And the shea had many uses to them. They would eat it as food. They would use it as creams and moisturizers, but they were very disjointed. So each little community did their own little thing. They didn't have warehouses. They didn't have anything. So, and they sold a little of it commercially. So there was a nonprofit that came along called Global Shea Alliance, and kind of grouped these villages together and educated these women on how they can commercially sell their shea. So we buy all of our shea through this alliance. These women now have a voice at the table. So it's really about women empowerment. They're providing medical and medical and schooling to their children now. It's just a tremendous story. They have a say at the table because they're bringing in the equivalent amount of money as the men now. And so that was really neat. I had a chance to go over and visit several of the groups that we source from, and just the culture and the passion that they have for it is tremendous. So those are just two examples, and so we're very proud of that. And so that's kind of a summary of that.
You're sending like your soap scraps. What are you doing with your soap scraps?
Yeah, so we try to do as close to zero waste as we can. So if you're not familiar with how you make soap, it's a two-step process. First is in the kettle, and we process these soap noodles. So we call them noodles. They look like little pasta things. And so once you have a soap noodle, you go and you press it. So it goes through a hopper, and it gets extruded out into a rectangle slug. And then you press it into the shape of the bar of soap. So sometimes there are circles and ovals and rectangles and squares. So it's just like making cookies, right? So you press it and you've got this extra dough. What do you do with the extra dough? As much as we can, it gets recycled and reused through the process. You get to a point where you have just scraps. When I make cookies with my daughter, we either put it, you make that one funny shaped cookie. Well, we can't make a funny shaped bar of soap. So we collect all that. And what we've been doing is we've been shipping that off through an agency called World Vision, one of the largest nonprofit social service organizations in the world. And they've been shipping it into Africa, into places like Somalia. Somalia has been classified as one of the most dangerous places in the world. And what has happened is these soap scraps go in. Again, there's a group of women are being entrepreneurials, and World Vision was teaching them about how to take care of their money and how to be entrepreneurial to an extent. When the soap scraps got there, what this initial group of women, what they did is they melted it down and pressed it into bar soap. And so what they now had soap for their own hygiene, and any extra they sold into the community. One of the things that just impressed me, and this warms my heart. This is, I think, one of the best things we've ever done. The doctor would come into these communities, like in Somalia, and once a week or twice a week, they would provide medical treatment. And what we've been told is prior to the soap getting there, there would be lines, down the pathways for people to see the doctor. Once the soap got there and they started using it, the line to visit the doctor went significantly down, and the doctor had more times to visit other communities within the other communities. So they could go to the neighboring communities and provide more health care. So we do that. And then any water that we use that doesn't go into the product that is recycled and that's turned into energy. We won an award just a short while ago for the amount for regeneration of energy through the water that we've provided out. So we try to get as much zero waste as we can.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, my conversation with you really left me thinking about everything that could be solid in the world instead of contained in a plastic bottle and made with water and having to, so it's really like gotten my thoughts flowing. And I think that we are going to see, I think Bradford's going to see a lot of growth in the coming years as people look for innovation in this area. And my hunch is it'll really transform your company and challenge you to innovate in new ways, because the planet is, people are not I think we're going to see really regulations where you can't use plastic, and it's going to force innovation, and we'll see what happens. It's an interesting time to be alive and to be in business, and personal care and beauty and hygiene is, something that is always going to be relevant and needed and essential to us. So it's going to be interesting to be in your position as president and CEO of Bradford. I hope people really found sort of an insight into solid products today interesting, and them being a path for a bluer planet in the coming years. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me and for teaching me a lot about solid personal care and soap.